Dr. Eli Shapiro. I want to start by thanking Yeshivat Hakotel and Rabbi Tarragon for including me in this wonderful project around Avos Yisrael. And when I was originally approached about speaking about the topic, I was thinking about the relationship between expectations and disappointment as it relates to ourselves, as it relates to relationships. And I was thinking about how back in the day prior to COVID, we used to travel, we used to go places. And one of the strategies that I would utilize to maximize my travel experience is a website called TripAdvisor. TripAdvisor is a wonderful site that rates hotels and experiences and services for travel, hence the name TripAdvisor. And one of the things that I noticed frequently is that hotels that were higher 5-star rated hotels would often, when it came to user reviews, would fall much lower than 2 or 3-star hotels in the same city. So for example, in the city of Fort Lauderdale, the #1 rated hotel is something called the Beachside Village Resort. The Beachside Village Resort is pretty much an efficiency hotel that is privately owned and operated. It's not affiliated with one of the major hotel brands, but still it is #1. It's the #1 beachside, #1 rated hotel in Fort Lauderdale, the Beachside Village Resort. But if you go to one of Marriott's crown jewels, the Ritz Carlton series of hotel in Fort Lauderdale, that's rated #10. So I was thinking, how could this be? How is it that what's clearly a superior hotel, the Ritz Carlton is clearly a superior hotel to the Beachside Village Resort, how is it that it is rated 10 notches below the resort? So for example, the Ritz Carlton is described as a property that features 192 guest rooms and suites, a 2,200 square foot club lounge, 29,000 square foot oceanfront sun deck with an infinity pool and private cabanas. The Waterview Fitness Center, marble bathrooms, floor to ceiling windows are all featured in every room, and balconies with an ocean or intercoastal waterway view. Every room at the Ritz Carlton, marble, luxury, spa, infinity pools, all these amazing features, yet it's #10 compared to the Beachside Village Resort, which boasts that every room in the resort has air conditioning. All rooms have a private bathroom, which I think is a must for my travel needs anyway. For your comfort, you'll also find free toiletries and a hairdryer. So we see the contrast, yet the Beachside Village Resort is #1 and the Ritz Carlton is #10. So how is it, how does that happen? And so I believe the answer, it really goes back to expectations. The root of almost all disappointment stems from our expectations. In fact, just the other week, I was in Woodburn with my family having a slice of pizza, and I expected it to be okay, and it was fantastic. So we see that relationship. But now, while we were sitting there, a Breslover Chassid came in with a stack of books that he was carrying, and he handed me a book called Don't Be Disappointed. And if we open the first paragraph, first sentence of the Don't Be Disappointed book, disappointments in life are inevitable. As long as you have expectations in life, then you leave the door open for getting disappointed. And so I knew I was on the right track in thinking about our relationship with ourselves and with others as it relates to expectations and disappointment. When I was reading the reviews of the Ritz Carlton, clearly when we go to a Ritz Carlton hotel, we have higher expectations for the service, for the amenities that we're going to receive. When I was reading the reviews, so I'll read some of them, I'll share some of them with you. The promised room upgrade was not to a better room, but to a room with an extra half bathroom. The jingle of the ice cream truck outside on the road ruined the luxury ambience. The hotel pool was too shallow and overrun with kids. The room was a handicap room, which in my opinion is always unacceptable. There were lamps in our room everywhere. 5 in just the bedroom portion of the suite alone. I felt like I was in a storage closet. And perhaps the most challenging experience that someone had is the valet made us throw out our own water bottles from our car. So we see the expectations of the Ritz Carlton were much higher, but the expectations of the lesser hotel, the efficiency hotel, was much lower. In fact, when we think about the time of waiting for something, we would think that 10 minutes would be a objective standard by which to evaluate responses and services. But those same 10 minutes at the Ritz Carlton turned out to be a disappointment, and 10 minutes at the beachfront resort efficiency hotel was acceptable. So in the review of the Ritz Carlton, the driveway is so short and narrow, I had to wait in a cab for 10 minutes before we could pull out. While at the other location, I locked us out of our room around 11:30 p.m. and called the night number. Within 10 minutes, I was met with a smile, and we were in our room. So we see that the expectations of a higher end item directly relates to our disappointments. These expectations and the resulting disappointments often interfere with our own subjective well-being, our own happiness, but also interfere with our relationships with friends, our relationships with spouses, our relationships with our children, family members. And if we were only able to manage those expectations more effectively, we would have a much more satisfied experience and less disappointment. I think COVID, for all of us, in some way or another, gave us the opportunity to manage expectations and avoid disappointments, or not be able to manage expectations and experience significant disappointments. Many of us had plans, different experiences, whether it was finishing school in a school building, or whether it was going to shul on a regular basis, or being able to go to shul without a mask on. In my own experience, my son became bar mitzvah during COVID. And so all the expectations, all the planning had to be mitigated and managed. So the Hanachas Tefillin was supposed to take place in Eretz Yisrael, in Hebron, with the Sofer, where my son would have the opportunity to actually finish sewing the tefillin. And putting on the tefillin at the Kotel was part of the experience, part of the plan, part of the expectations. And the bar mitzvah was going to be the traditional bar mitzvah in shul with a catered kiddush, etc. But none of those things were going to happen in the way that we planned on them happening. And the reason it was still a positive and wonderful experience is because of the ability to manage expectations, to be able to pivot. And when we use the word expectations, really expectations from a psychological standpoint coincide with a must. Usually we have statements in our head, this must happen for me to be happy. So when we think about expectations, we want to shift expectations from expectations to standards or preferences. I would like something to happen. It would be nice if something happened. I would like it to be this way. But if we are stuck in a mindset where it is a must, then we're continuously going to be disappointed, both in life experiences and in friendships and relationships. It's much easier to be able to do this and manage expectations when it doesn't involve other people. So it's easier to say, well, this is what Hashem wants, this is what was Bashar, and we can put it aside. But sometimes when it involves other people, it's much more difficult to do that. For example, there's a famous story of an individual who brought his cow to the community Rav to make sure that it was kosher for shechita, and the Rav said that the cow was not kosher and it couldn't be used for shechita and for kosher meat. And so the person said, well, if the Rav said it, that's okay, I accept the psak halacha. Not too long ago, after that, he had a din Torah with another individual for a much smaller amount of money. And the Rav paskined in favor of the other individual. And the same individual who was able to let go of his expectations when it came to the cow and the psak halacha regarding that, was unable to do so when it came to involving another person. There's something about when other people are involved that it makes it that much more difficult to manage expectations versus existential expectations. So obviously this person who lost the din Torah now, the Rav doesn't know anything, et cetera, et cetera. So I personally found a lot of value in the Myers-Briggs personality inventory. Most of us are familiar with Myers-Briggs as it relates to being an extrovert or an introvert. But there are other categories, whether it is sensing and intuitive, extrovert, introvert, thinking, feeling, and my actual two favorite categories are perceiving and judging. Perceivers experiencing anxiety when they're locked into decisions, and judgers feel anxiety when they are don't have their decisions made. And so I often found that a lot of the conflict that occurs between friends and spouses are a result of the personality types and the personality preferences. So while a perceiver might not want to commit to going to a wedding until the last minute because they don't want to be locked in, the judger wants to make that decision right away. And so in social experiences with friends, with other people, we often find ourselves in conflict based on personality styles and our expectations that other people conform to our personality preferences. So if we have those expectations where other people are meant to conform to our personality preferences or what we expect, then we're continuously going to be disappointed, and it creates acrimony and crisis within those friendships, within those relationships. But if we can perspective take and understand how other people operate and how other people experience, and we reduce our expectations that their behavior should be exactly how we want it. And we can say that, it's a preference. I would prefer if my friends could commit to doing something a year in advance the way I operate. I would prefer that, but if they can't or if they don't, that's okay. But if it's an expectation, if I demand it, if it's a must, it really creates problems in Ahavas Yisrael and our relationship. So for me personally, having the Myers-Briggs understanding was extremely helpful in me understanding the same anxiety, the same stress that I feel by not deciding something other people experience by having to decide something. It actually helped those relationships. So thinking in those terms of expectations versus preferences. A very simple way of thinking about this is just really basic. I may prefer vanilla ice cream at 5 degrees when I eat it. But if someone offers me chocolate ice cream at 10 degrees, I can probably work that into and enjoy that. But if my expectations are that it's a must, that this is how I have to have it, this is the way I expect it, this is the way I want it, this is the way I need it, we're going to continuously be disappointed in situations and disappointed with other people. So that's a very simple way of thinking about it. So we understand that as human beings, we all have expectations, we all have preferences, we all have standards. The question is, how can we reduce the expectations from the musts to more shoulds and preferences in order to be happier and also be happier with our relationships with other people? So the first step is to change the language. If we use language that says, I must have this, or I must do this, or you must do this for me, we are continuously going to be disappointed. We need to change the language. Language is extremely powerful. It actually changes our brain chemistry. It changes how we think about things just by providing the language differences. And a great example of that is in growth mindset. Changing the language, we tend to utilize the word yet as part of a growth mindset. Growth mindset allows us to make a process out of something, and therefore we are better able to accomplish things moving forward. So if I can't do this report, right, that's too hard for me to do this report, or even better, to do this speech, I can't do this speech yet. If I change the word yet and add the word yet to it, it makes it a possibility, it makes it something that I can do. So instead of just saying, I don't drive a Lamborghini, I now say, I don't drive a Lamborghini yet. So now it's within the realm of possibility, but it totally changes our emotional response. So if we can look at our relationships and look at how we communicate and look at the language that we use, we can easily shift from this must be the case, which is an expectation, to this would be nice, or it could be, or it should be, I'd like it to be, etc. But shifting that language will really reduce the stress and disappointment that we experience. So step one in improving relationships and managing expectation is changing the language. Step two, one of my favorite authors is a professor from Wharton University, an organizational psychologist named Adam Grant. Adam Grant wrote a wonderful book called Give and Take, in which he identifies that most people fall into one of three categories, either being a giver, being a taker, or being a matcher. Givers are individuals that perform acts for other people, selfless acts with no expectation of reciprocity or something in return. Takers are the opposite. They pretty much are focused on themselves and do things that are in their own self-interest at the expense of the greater good, and those are takers. And then a lot of people fall into the matchers category, where I'll do something for you, but I expect something in return as well. So those are matchers. And he identifies the benefits and the challenges that go along with each of these categories. But three of the greatest benefits that we see in givers is, one, givers tend to be happier than the other group. Givers tend to have, in the long term, greater career success than matchers or takers. And perhaps most importantly, givers tend to have positive long-term relationships. Givers, again, are the ones that give of themselves without expectation. They just do it because it's the right thing to do, because they feel it's the right thing to do, and they are giving people. So givers tend to have more positive long-term relationships. So step one, we need to adjust the language from a must to other wants or prefer. Two, focus on being a giver. The more we give, the more we go out of our way to help other people with no expectations, the less disappointment we're going to have, the less expectations we have, and overall, the research bears out those people are, one, happier, they have more career success, and they have more positive long-term relationships. And the third suggestion is actually, it's expressing gratitude. It's not a new concept, the relationship between expressing gratitude and overall happiness, but tying it into expectations is really important. There was a great study done by Peterson and Seligman on gratitude. It was called the Grateful Study. And the positive journaling study, where individuals would write down at the end of the day 5 things that they were grateful for, and there was another group, the control group, would do nothing. So you had one group that was writing down every day things that they were grateful for, the other group was doing nothing. And what they found was that the people that would express gratitude were overall happier. They were more appreciative of the things around them, and their expectations of being given things also seem to decrease. So when we think about expressing gratitude, it directly relates to our expectations. The more we express appreciation for things, the less we are going to expect from other people. So 3 strategies towards improving relationships and increasing happiness. 1 is changing the language, 2 is being a giver, and 3 is expressing gratitude. And so when we think about disappointments, when we think about Avas Yisrael, when we think about our relationships with other people, we should think in terms of what our expectations are. When we go into relationships, friendships, or even our own experiences, we need to ask ourselves, what do we want out of the relationship? What do we want out of the friendship? And is it something that is a must, or is it something that would enhance and that it's something that makes us happier by understanding that we should not expect anything individual, anything specific, and just appreciate the things that we're given, and that will lead to improved relationships, both in the near term and in the long term. Thank you very much.